Hey everybody, welcome back. It's me, Ardalis from NimblePros, and this week I have special guest Mads Kristensen from Microsoft with me. Mads, welcome. Could you introduce yourself to everyone, please?
You bet. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm Mads Kristensen. I'm on the Visual Studio team, a product manager, and I've been there for about 15 years in different capacities. And before that, I was a web developer using Visual Studio for about 10 years before I joined Microsoft. So I've been using Visual Studio for 25 years and still going strong.
Yeah, and you've written, I don't know, dozens, if not hundreds of extensions for Visual Studio too over the years. I know I've used a ton of them. Isn't that how many has it been? Do you have any idea?
You know, I think it's over 200, but
Wow.
I don't really know the exact number.
You have to be the most prolific Visual Studio extension author, I would imagine. So
Yeah,
so today,
probably.
we're really excited to be talking about the next version of Visual Studio. Is that right?
Yes, very excited. My new favorite topic.
And it's available for everyone to download now. We'll put a URL up in the description of the
Yep.
video. But it finally has a name. Is that right?
It has Visual Studio 2026. It's available if you go to visualstudio.com, click the download button, select preview. You can get the preview version, which is it's available. It's free to try. You can use the community, the pro, the enterprise version, and I think you're going to be very surprised, very pleasantly surprised of what you'll see in the new version.
Yeah, I've been using it for a few weeks now myself, and it's been really rock solid. It's got a lot of cool new features. Seems to be faster than the previous version in a lot of things. So I'm pretty excited about it. What are some of your favorite features that you'd like to highlight?
I think like you were touching on like it's faster. So I think performance is one of those things where it's one of my favorite things about the new version. It feels lighter. It's kind of a lightweight feel almost to Visual Studio for the first time in a long time. It starts up faster, solution loads faster, it builds faster. When you hit F5, you get to your breakpoint faster. A lot of work has gone into that, of course, but also into moving things off the UI thread and into background processes, which is kind of interesting because you really feel that. That's kind of the magic that makes it feel more lightweight. It has to do
Mhm.
with when you sometimes you do an action, you click a button, and Visual Studio is like frozen for like half a second or
Right.
two or five or more, right, depending on what you're doing. And
Yeah.
that's because that Visual Studio is performing an action using the UI thread. That means the UI thread is busy and it cannot do things like show you context menus or update in any capacity. It's frozen. That's when you think of Visual Studio as frozen, that's what happens. But we've
Mhm.
been moving so much stuff onto the background thread so that when you open a solution, when you open big documents or perform common actions, Visual Studio now stays responsive. Everything works. You can click menus, you can hover over buttons, and you see the button hover effect and all that type of stuff. IntelliSense all runs and boots up stuff in the background, and so you get a much more responsive UI, and it just feels fantastic. So that responsiveness combined with the just faster performance in general is like just absolutely fantastic. So that's
Yeah.
probably my favorite thing, and it's a thing you kind of just notice immediately.
Yeah, I definitely did. And I think that's a welcome change. It's not often that something gets faster as it gains features, right? So like it's
Yeah,
hard to do, I know. And especially for something like Visual Studio, which is, has a lot of legacy code in it because it's been around for what, 20 years or more? I mean, it's
over
oh, I know it's
28
over
years.
20 years. 28 years? Yeah.
Yeah, it'll turn 29 in March next year.
Wow. Yeah. So and it's still being used by millions of developers every day. So I mean that's
Yeah,
amazing.
and more every day. Like the user numbers of Visual Studio is growing. So Visual Studio
Right.
is getting more and more usage, which is fantastic, and maybe surprising to some people who think that we see more Visual Studio VS Code stuff now, but even though that's
Right.
true, they grow
Mhm.
as well. Visual Studio grows too. So
Nice.
it's a great journey. It's a testament, I feel like, to both the team but also the community. We've been doing a lot of work with the MVPs, such as yourself, but also just the community of users in general, to fix so many things like paper cuts and like small nuisances and things that are slow. And We've been doing that for the past couple of years, and I think that like really shows. It's something that really people really notice when we do stuff like that, and
Mhm.
I think that's accelerating. When we look at the rate of how we fix user-reported bugs, like that's going up. We're fixing more and more, and we're implementing more and more feature requests too. We implement more than one feature request per workday on
Wow.
average. Yeah.
Wow. And how big is the team? Is that public knowledge? Is that something you can share? Like, is this three
Yeah.
people that are doing this, or is this, like 1,000 people? Like,
Yeah.
how are you
No,
getting that much done with the resources you have?
so it's the amount of people working on Visual Studio is fluent. So I can't say, hey, there's 150 people working on Visual Studio.
Right.
It's probably around that.
Okay.
But the reason it's fluent is because let's say that Azure, they did this thing called bicep files that was going to take over
Mhm.
for ARM templates.
Right.
So we need support for that in Visual Studio. So now the Azure team, they come and they build that into Visual Studio, and they work on that for like 2 months, let's say. And then they go
Okay.
back to doing other things. So in
Sure.
those 2 months, we now have 4 more people working on Visual Studio. So you can imagine this is kind of a common scenario where the Windows teams and Office, the Teams toolkit, which is now the M365 agent toolkit, they come in. SQL Server team has like a bunch of tools in Visual Studio, and there's very dynamic team in that sense. So
Nice.
I can't answer the question. I would love to, but I can't.
Sure.
It's fluent.
Right.
I
Yeah.
I, I think it's about 150 average.
It must be a challenge to keep the code consistent when you've got folks from various teams within the large organization coming in and building out their pet part of the overall toolkit.
Well, we have a bunch of systems in place for that. It's actually pretty fantastic. A lot of the features that we see that goes into Azure DevOps and um, various parts of Visual Studio when it comes to like coding standards and security testing and all this type of like quality gates, they start as something that we use internally. We develop for internal purposes to align all teams on common standards and whatnot. And then, we can productize that later on. But a lot of it starts like that because we got so many developers. We're one of the largest developer companies, of course, in the world, right? And so we have the same issues that everybody else got.
Right.
But we also have the expertise to do something about it and productize it. So that's how a lot of features actually start when it comes to like the enterprise level features. So not so much the regular end user features or like delighters or things you need to be productive, but those kind of governance, security, coding standards, typical enterprise kind of value props.
Sure. And I know a big feature for Microsoft and the whole industry these days, not a big feature so much, but a big focus is AI. And
Yeah.
I noticed there's a lot of AI focus in this coming version of Visual Studio. Can you speak to some of those features as well?
Yeah, so that's another one of my top threes is part of being an IDE means that you get everything in the box, right? You get Test Explorer, you get a way to run and debug and profile your apps. It's all like in the box, right? And so
Right.
other editors out there, they rely maybe on like a core feature set, and then they have extensions that provide kind of all these other features that you rely on in your day-to-day work. And the difference there is that if you want to create any experiences that needs knowledge of all the different parts, it's really hard to do if you don't ship those parts in the box, if you don't kind of own all those different parts. And so that's the power of the IDE, is that we can kind of think AI all the way through into all these different aspects. And that's a huge thing that we've been working on for 2026 is to basically integrate AI much deeper than we did otherwise. And so you can think of this as like a platform foundation work that we put into this first release of 26, which is this ability so that we can now tap into like a much richer context. And not only can we know about your unit tests and your debugging scenarios and whatnot, we can also know about your Azure topology, your databases, and like much more, like your whole all your touch points as a developer, right? It's a big topology you got.
Yeah.
And the first feature we were kind of rolling in for that is the profiler agent. So you're nodding, you've seen that.
Right. That's where I was headed.
it's a magical thing. We're going to have to do we're going to ship some nice videos on that. So that's going to come out soon, just because it's such a fantastic thing, and it's a fantastic thing because of two things. Let me explain what it is, and then we'll
Okay.
demystify why this is a fantastic thing. So the profiler agent takes advantage of the fact that Visual Studio has a profiler built in. Now, most people don't use the profiler, but what the profiler does, it allows Visual Studio to instrument your code and then run it. And that instrumentation is there to help measure and find out what are the hot paths in your code. Like where do memory leaks come from? What are expensive method calls, or what lines of code takes a long time to execute, and so on and so forth. And the profiler will give you that information. So now you can see like flame charts, and you can see hot paths, and you can see that particular line of code was called this many times and it took this long, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So, but many people don't do that. But even if you did, how would you then know how to optimize the performance? It just tells you, hey, you have this line of code that is problematic or expensive, but what are you going to do with that knowledge? So what the profiler agent can do is that it can come in and it can add benchmarks around in your code. It can hit your methods like 1,000 times really quickly. For instance, it can gather all that data. It can figure out the hot paths, the memory leaks, the CPI resource stuff, and the object allocation issues and whatnot, and have a very clear understanding of what's going on, and then it will suggest to you how to fix it.
Right.
How can you fix the memory leak? How can you increase the throughput or whatever, improve the performance? And it'll give you a plan saying, hey, here's the things that I think we should do. Should we go ahead and do it? And because you're always in control here, so you steer it. You say yes, or you say, hey, I don't understand that fix you're proposing, so don't do that. I don't want stuff in my code that I don't understand myself. Because for me, for instance, I'm not super low level. I can't go all the way down to the metal, right? And so I might not have an understanding of how to really utilize the new dotnet span types, for instance, to really reduce my allocations. But there could be so many different, or run unsafe code to like, I can't even talk about it because I don't really know about that low level stuff. And that's true for a lot of people. We all have our lower boundary. It's different for each of us. So what it allows me to do is that I can now learn alongside the copilot, the profiler agent. So I can tell it, no, do it in a way that try to come up with something else, a different way to solve this particular one. But I agree with the other ones you did. You can go ahead and do those while you give me a new suggestion for that thing I didn't understand. And so you can go back and forth, and when you're happy with it, you can just have it execute it. It will then run the benchmarks again, and you can see, oh, I got a 300% increase in throughput, and I got a less memory allocations as a result over here, and so on. And so that's fantastic. So now we get to the fantastic part, right? This is fantastic because this is a door that was closed to me before. I did not know how to open the door into profiling and performance tuning on a low level. It was simply just not something I was capable of. And I hadn't really looked at it. I don't, that requires me that time of learn. I have to spend time learning this.
Right.
I have a day job. I have a family. I don't have, that much time. So, and that's true for a lot of people. That's your
time
door.
Is our,
we all have the door.
Resource.
Yeah. So now that door is open for the first time. I like to, be a little dramatic and say it makes the impossible possible. Because to me, that was impossible. Now it's possible. But at the same time, it also helps me learn and understand how different choices in my program, how different programming techniques and different types in .NET, for instance, if I use different types, how that could speed up and make better performance. And so I learned something. I get better. So next time I get to a situation like that where I was going to use a dictionary, I can now use a hash set instead or something. I'm making this up.
Right.
And so I think that's magical. The whole doors being opened, and I learn and get better myself. And I think that is, we have one feature for that right now that come out of the box, the profiler agent. but we're going to see a lot more of that going forward. And Visual Studio 2026 is kind of that foundation that makes that possible. So we're getting some fantastic stuff at the very beginning right now, but we're going to see a lot more of that. And that to me is super exciting.
Cool. Let's take a look. Can we see it?
Oh yeah. So this is Visual Studio 2026.
All right.
Yeah, so you get a lot of color themes out of the box, and you'll notice how it's this new UI is what's called fluent. So you have a lot more crisper lines. It's more relaxing to the eye. It's new icons that are very, very clear. So some things that people don't always think about is like accessibility and cognitive load and stuff. The fact is that we're using Visual Studio for like all day long, every day. We want to make sure that it's as easy as possible to use on the eyes, and and accessibility plays a big role. So there's a big accessibility play here in making sure that all that is right, and that's going to keep improving. Now we see a bunch of cool stuff here in the first preview, but you're going to see that improve over time as well. But it's absolutely gorgeous. It looks modern. It feels nice, and I'm a big fan of this. So that's what it looks like. You have a bunch of options here. And speaking of options, I just hit Tools Options. Notice how that is not a dialog box that's like all not themed and doesn't look like this old school thing, but it's new and nice and modern. And I can still search up here, but I say, hey, only show me performance related settings, only show me things that has to do with accessibility, or only show me things that I have modified that are not the default setting. So that's really nice that you can filter.
That is cool.
Everything like this. So I'm really happy about that. You can even like just edit the JSON, as it is right here. This JSON here is because we are now having a whole new settings model, which is backed by JSON, instead of being this XML thing that was never meant for users to modify. And most people probably didn't even know that you maybe could do that because it was such a weird thing. But now it's just a JSON file. And what's really nice is that you can actually take anything and put it into a solution, into your repo. So you can change. So for instance, if I go to, if I change it to just be my my solution here,
right?
I can go in and let's see here. So we're in the user scope. Should we do this? Let's see. You can make changes. Oh, here we go. Let's say for this particular repository or solution, I want a different color theme.
Right. And so the whole team will pick this up when they pull the repository. Yeah. If you choose to store this at the solution level.
Yeah. So you can see. So now I close the solution, and we're back to whatever color theme I had before. And then when I open the solution, you'll see that all of a sudden, like boop, the color theme applies here. So this is actually a feature that people have been asking for a long time, is how can they make, if you have multiple instances of Visual Studio open, one for each of the solutions you work on, how can you make them look different?
Right.
So if you do it this way, you can, so you can, if you check in that file, that settings file, you can see here's what it looks like. It's only the difference. It's only the delta that's saved in the repo. So that's what it looks like. Those are the things and you can edit them. You can just, change them like this, save it, and then you're good to go. You can sync it up, for instance. That's it. So if you commit this to source control, then your whole team will get the setting. Otherwise, don't commit it and just make it yours, and that works too.
That's cool.
Yeah. I think this is really cool. Big fan. So a lot of cool things. So some of my favorites, right? The performance, the AI, the Copilot, deep integration is another one, and then the UI. And that's absolutely fantastic. This is another great theme I really like. Notice here in the bottom right, I have it's actually an extension called Shortcut Presenter. It basically lists all the shortcuts that I'm doing. So if I'm presenting, you can kind of follow along and see if I hit a keyboard shortcut, it will show what I just did.
Nice.
Yeah. But it's an extension. And so for the first time ever, Visual Studio, a new major version is compatible with extensions to the previous version. So that means that you can install any extension for that worked in Visual Studio 2022. You can install that in 2026.
That's cool.
And so you might see something like, hey, this extension declares support for an older version, so it might not work. Right? You get a little warning because the author of the extension did not claim that this works on 2026. So if you want to install it, it just says, hey, are you sure you want to install it? This might not work. And you say yes. And so far, all the extensions you tried, all the extensions that I've heard of, that other people, MVPs and people that have had early access, they have all said that it just works. They haven't run into a single one that doesn't. Now, that doesn't mean that one doesn't exist. It just means that we haven't seen it yet. But that's a good sign. And so that's just fantastic. That means that all your extensions are going to be there on day one if you go from Visual Studio 2022 to 2026. And that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Shortcut Presenter, I see that it's one of yours. So that's a good one. I might have to use that when I'm presenting.
Yeah. And speaking of shortcuts, if you try out this Keyboard Hero, have you heard of this one?
No.
So this one will like log your whenever you execute commands, but you don't do it with a keyboard shortcut. Then
it'll tell you there's a shortcut for that.
It will tell you what the shortcut is, and it will give you like a list of. So here you go. You can see here I've used.
Nice.
Yeah, you can see like which ones have. So this is for today. I've used it. These are things I've done without using a keyboard shortcut. And so it will so you can learn. It tells you what the shortcut is, and so it helps you learn.
That's cool. And that's available right now. You don't even need the new Visual Studio for that because that extension's for 2022, right?
That's right. For 2022 and 2026. And I have marked my extension such that it says that it supports 2026. So it supports both out of the box. You don't get that little warning icon. Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, this is fantastic. I can't wait for people to start playing with Visual Studio 2026 and, finding out all the cool features it has, maybe submitting some ideas for new features, maybe new extensions. What's the best way for them to give feedback in the tool? There's a feedback icon in the top right. Is that the best way?
Yeah. So if you have any issues, if you want us to change a behavior like that doesn't work, like a bug or something you find, go to help and then send feedback, and you can submit a bug report that way. You can also do the same thing, but say send feature requests, and then you can request any feature you want. And we do take that very seriously. We go through all these. They come into the individual product teams. So if you open a bug or you suggest a feature for the C# editor, let's say, that goes to the C# editor team, right? It's not like it just goes in a pile somewhere. It actually goes into the people that triage these things every week, and we have a really good track record. Even though people like to, say, hey, I opened these bugs 2 years ago and nothing happened. And while that is true sometimes, a lot of times we actually fix all these things. And, in the past 12 months, we fixed 4,500 user-reported bugs. So 18 user-reported bugs per workday go into. So and the trend is going up. This is not like our new normal. We're doing more and more, right? So, and same goes for feature requests. We do over one feature request per day, per workday in the past 12 months. That's awesome. So it absolutely matters that you share with us what you'd like, what direction you'd like to see Visual Studio. So that's a great way of doing that. If you want to just contact me directly, Twitter is a good place, Reddit, wherever you hang out, and we might be there, Blue Sky and all those different channels. So, and then stay on top of the blog. We're going to have a lot more information coming out. So, I mentioned like a few features here that I kind of like, and I think that's worth mentioning, but there's like features all over, new features or improvements or tweaks or enhancements or whatever. and you're going to see a lot of blog posts coming out over the next months about like where we go deep into each of these things. So make sure you follow the Visual Studio blog. That's kind of the premier place to follow along on new stuff coming up.
Cool. Yeah, and if anybody has a question about anything we talked about today, leave a comment below. And thanks again. Thank you very much, Mads, for taking time today to talk to me about the new Visual Studio. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right. We'll see you later. Thanks, everybody. Keep improving.